Hi, and welcome back to the Growing as a Family podcast. I'm Joel.
And I'm Clarice.
And today we're talking about a topic that we have thought about for a while. What is it?
Thought about it for about a year and a half. Today we're just going to have a discussion about what we've learned over our year and a half of marriage. So,
come along for the ride. I would say launching into the first thing that we talked about, it hit me really hard when we first got married, was love languages. And learning how to love Clarice how she wanted to be loved. And I know that's a big subject, and it's probably worth a whole podcast. So we'll touch on it a little lightly, but it was more than just like a book or like reading how to love her or like women want to be like complimented. It was more than just that.
Yeah, it takes it's more personal than that.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of the stuff relates, I feel like, to women and then relates to men. So,
yeah.
There's a little general terms there, but
I would say when I first got married to Clarice, I had no idea that she craved companionship and quality time with me. And that was something foreign to me because none of my family had that. And it was almost like, oh yeah, I do enjoy spending time with her, but it's like she needs it. And learning how to sufficiently fulfill her need in that was something that I had to learn. And it took me a while. There were definitely some nights that we had discussions about it, like, I don't feel like you're loving me enough. And I'm like, how am I supposed to love you? And so
you're like, I love you so much.
Yeah, I do. It's in my heart.
Well, I think it's really easy to show and give the love language that you want, because it's it's like second nature to you. To I wanted to give you all the quality time, and to you, you're like, well, quality time isn't it's great, but there's other love languages that fill my cup more.
Yes.
But I was giving what I wanted to receive, so that took us a little bit to figure out fill each other's cup, and therefore your cup will also be filled. It's like a give and take thing. But.
And it's definitely fill my cup, and I want it to be filled first. Well, no, that's selfish, and that's what we want to say in our hearts. But it should be filled the other person's first. And going off of what you said too, I really loved physical touch. So I was hugging and holding hands, and I was like, I really want to be with you, and I want you to, hold my hand so I know that you love me, or hug me, or kiss me because I want to feel loved. And so it was like, can you please just give me a couple seconds? And that was what, Clarice was saying, and she likes physical touch, right?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't have to give away all my love languages in order, but I mean, it's up there a little bit. It makes me feel loved, but I really like that one-on-one eye connection.
And I would say quality time is up there for me. But it's if I get too much of it and not enough of physical love, I'm like, hey, can we get some of that?
So we can just combine it and hold hands while we have a deep conversation.
Sure. Problem solved.
Now we cracked the code.
Thank you for
That's
your
it.
help.
All right.
Yeah. Join us next time.
It's important to pay attention to each other's love languages, and I feel like that's brought us a lot closer. And
another thing that I had to learn in that aspect was fill an empty cup out of an empty cup, and how hard that is. But that's what we're called to do. As men, we're called to love our wives, and that means laying aside your preferences and your wants and desires for the day, the hour, whatever it takes to sit down, in my case, talk with Clarice, because that's what she wants. She wants a 20, 30, 40-minute conversation, and if I'm like, oh, but I didn't get love today or hugs, well, that's just an excuse on my part, and that needs to take second thought to her.
Yeah, it's about sacrificial love. I feel like something we both learned was how like selfish we truly are. Like, you know,
Yes.
even me like getting married was like fulfilling a dream that I wanted for myself. You know, it wasn't. I didn't really think about like, oh, I'm gonna enter this marriage and how can I like serve him my whole life and like make his life awesome. No, it was like, oh, I'm fulfilling my dream and he's gonna fulfill my dreams. It's like that's what you think of, but then you get married and you know you realize that
wow, this person's selfish.
yeah, you're selfish. I'm not the problem. But then you realize you are the problem.
Yes. Yeah, that was. We had some long conversations at night, you know, around the dinner table here, and just even in bed late at night, just like I don't feel like you're putting time into me, and I don't feel like there's something missing, and I don't know what it is. And I'm just, a little bit angry or flustered at you, and I think a lot of that is love languages. So, you know, this is what we've learned: figure out the love languages and do them. I think that's something that we are getting better at. We're not perfect. We've only been married for a year and a half, so we're still learning as well. But that would be our point of advice.
Yeah, and it ebbs and flows, and your love languages change, and that's why it's important to, you know, have conversations, ongoing conversations. Because if I start liking something different, or I realize I, you know, want something more of a different love language, then you know you need to talk about that instead of just resenting the other person for not filling your cup how you thought they should.
Talk about it too. I think that's a great way to learn about the other person, is to stop and have conversations. Like, instead of being go, 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 and then you go to bed at night and you just lay next to each other, like, hey, let's have a conversation. You know, what made you sad today? What made you happy today? You know, how can I improve? How, you know, what did you like or dislike? And I think that can be both ways. Both men and women can ask those questions. I don't think it always has to be the man or always has to be the wife.
Yeah, ask like where you're at, you know, how are you feeling? You know, you can put it on a scale 1 to 10.
Yeah.
How fulfilled do you feel right now?
Yeah. 10 being the best, 1 being the absolute worst.
Yeah.
We do that sometime. We learned that from a podcast we actually listened to a while back on marriage, and it's just a gauge to ask where the other person's at. Like 10 is the best, absolute best. You're on a cruise and you eat amazing food. You're with the person you love, and there's just nice warm sun, and you have anything you want in the world, and you feel like a 10. I'm in love with this person, and we're doing the best things. And then 1 is like you live in a cave by yourself, and they live in another cave 100 miles away. Like,
that's how you feel.
That's how you feel. Yeah. And so
yeah,
sometimes I'll ask Clarice, like, hey, what are we on a scale of, you know, where am I at on the scale? And sometimes she'll go, I think we're at a 6. And 6 for me is low, guys. Like, if we're below a 7, like, I know I did something wrong, or I need to step it up. And because, like, I would say like 7.5, 8, that's the sweet spot. Like 9 is like, we had a great day. You know, we went to 4th of July. And
I think Joel's generous. He gives out a lot of, a 10 for sure. I'm like, what?
I'm optimistic.
And I'm still learning, you know, to be okay with his answers, because I kind of look at him with the death glare. What are we at? Definitely a 10.
Oh, yeah, please be a 10. Right.
Like, I can be honest with you, but you can't be honest.
Yeah.
We're getting there.
I'm a fix-it man, so I like to fix things really fast. And so if we're not perfect, quote-unquote perfect, then I kind of get into this, like, oh, no. And so I would say I definitely ask her a lot more than she asks me. You know, I say to her a lot, hey, where are we at? And I don't think she asks me a lot where she feels she's at, which is fine. I think that's our personalities, but having like a scale is good to gauge where you're at, because sometimes Clarice doesn't know why she's at a 6. You know, sometimes I don't know why I feel like I'm at a 6 or a 5. You know, it's just like an understanding that she knows that I visibly am off, but I don't know why. So then we talk.
Well, you really expounded on that.
Thank you.
Throwing out all the numbers.
Mm.
I feel like something that reminds me of is something you brought up, that we're always on the same team. I feel like we learned, like learning that helps you solve a lot of conflict and gets you on the same, like on the same playing field, you know? You're on the same team, you're not out to get each other. I feel like that's something really important to remember, because, you know, when you get married, you're one and you're for the other person and with the other person through thick and thin. So, you know, I like to remind myself, like, you know, when I'm upset with Joel for something and I haven't even talked to him about it, I'm like, you know, like, I know he loves me, I know he cares about me, so I'm probably like blowing this out of proportion in my mind. And so I try and approach like conversations like with that on my mind, that I know you love me and you want the best for our relationship. And because you always say like, we're on the same team, like he'll even say that when we're like arguing, like like we're on the same team, we gotta figure this out. And I feel like that's always a good reminder for me. So.
I had an analogy told to me a while back about marriage and being on the same team. Imagine a playing field where on the playing field there's all quarterbacks. And for those who don't know football, that's the guy that gets the ball and he gets protected by everyone. And he's kind of like the main guy of the football team. And the man that was telling me this said, imagine there's everyone on the team is a quarterback. He said you wouldn't have a team then, because there's nobody to protect the quarterback. There's no one to run down the field and catch the ball. There's no one to run the ball from the quarterback's hands so they keep the quarterback protected. If they're all quarterbacks, they can't do their job well. And he said, now think of that as marriage. You are, as a husband, maybe the quarterback, maybe your wife is the quarterback, and maybe you are protecting her, or maybe you're the one running down the field. You have specific roles, and they're different for a reason, because if you were both the same, then you wouldn't fulfill your job well, and you wouldn't fulfill your purpose well, and you ultimately then can work better. Is it harder? Yes, because you don't think the same, and you're sometimes not on the same page, but that's being one is being on the same team, and sometimes that is hard to accomplish. But it's really important to get down, because then when you operate as a team, then you start to move with purpose and it starts to work as it should. And that's what oneness is being and working together on something.
Yeah. I get where you're going.
Yeah.
I feel like that, sorry, I keep bringing up all the new points, but we always talk about in our marriage, because I heard it somewhere, probably a podcast I listened to.
She listens to a lot of podcasts and reads a lot of books.
So it could be from anywhere.
It could be from anywhere.
But it really resonated with me, was like having a 100-100 marriage instead of a 50-50, which you hear about all the time, you know, like you put in half the work, I'll put in half the work. It's fair, you know, it's, you can expect what's going to happen from the other person, you know, and if they're not giving as much as they should, then they're not meeting your 50%. And then, you know, you got this kind of like a battleground, you know? And I feel like that causes a lot of room for like strife and like pitting each other against one another, you know?
And if you, for some reason, go and give 51%, you're already over that bar of fairness. But when you're giving 100%, if you go to 101%, you can't really go to 101%. You know, you're already giving all you can, and so it doesn't matter if the other person is giving or not, because you are.
Yeah, it's like you give 100% and they give 100%, so there's no like room for comparison, you know? Like, and sometimes it can be like you decide first, like, oh, I'm gonna give it all I have, I'm not gonna hold grudges, or you know, keep a record of wrongs against this person. But you know, you decide, I'm gonna give it my all, and you know, nothing bad can come from that. I mean, you don't want to wear yourself out, but you know, just fulfill your role and put all your heart into it, and you know, usually they'll take notice, and
I really hope they notice if you're giving 100%, because it says something about your character too. We were talking about selfishness a little bit earlier, and I found out that I was really selfish coming into the marriage, because I was like, I want to do all these things, you know, that I want to do, and like, you're just coming along for the ride. And Clarice was like, whoa, where's my point in this? And so I think if you're giving that 100%, it also changes your character a little bit, and it gives you a character of more generosity and not selfishness. And I think if, you know, your spouse is an observer of any a remark, then they will see your generosity of 100%, and hopefully they'll say something about it, and hopefully it'll bring up conversation.
But it has to flow from your heart, you know, and it almost becomes like a joy to serve the other person. Like, you know, they always say like, oh, try and outdo each other, and that makes marriage really fun. Like, oh, I'm gonna cook him something special tonight, you know, just because I love him, and I'm not gonna be like, oh, you better, you know,
bring me flowers,
or I made this for nothing. It's almost like becomes a competition, not of like who's giving more, but like who can give more. You know, and it just gotta come from a good place, though.
It does, and I think also too, it can't come with an expectation. So if Clarice decides to do something really nice for me, and she is like, I'm gonna surprise him, in her mind, she can't be like, well, if I'm gonna surprise him, then tomorrow he's gotta surprise me. Because that's like a visual representation of the heart, and in that way, it is selfish. You know, she's expecting something in return. You know, if I bring her flowers, you know, I don't expect her the next day to buy me a new watch. Like,
and that's like a whole nother point. This is like something we have talked about a lot, but my biggest struggle, especially in the beginning of marriage, was my expectations of what it was gonna be like. And like, it was amazing, but I just had these like way too silly of expectations that I would like hold in my head, and then like if you wouldn't meet them, it just built resentment. It was like I was like digging you a hole that you couldn't get out of, even though, you know, like you were always so nice and thoughtful and everything. But you know, I just thought I was getting married, it was gonna be a fairy tale, and you know, if he did something one time that was so nice, I was like, oh, like I just want to grab more, you know, like I expect this all the time. But I don't know, something I've learned is to not set the bar low, like I don't think high of you, because I do, like you're so amazing, but to like recognize those things and like, you know, hold them in my heart, and you know, it'll carry me through to the next kind thing you do. But it's just like all the time, I don't know, I was very ungrateful in a way, and I feel like that just goes with contentment, like have realistic expectations, you know? And then, I mean, we had a lot of conversations about it, but you didn't even know how to fill my cup that I had.
I was learning too, and I had my own expectations, and they weren't as fairy tale movie-esque as Clarice's, but they were definitely like, I'm married now, I get to be the man, the leader, and I, you know, get to drag my wife around to whatever I want to do. And that was totally not what marriage is supposed to be like. And that is a completely unrealistic expectation. And so I think there was definitely a few months that we had to learn, and we had some hard conversations where I was like, Clarice, I feel like you're, you know, accounting me next to Jesus. Like, that's how I'm supposed to act. Like, I need to be Superman every day. And the one day I'm not Superman, I get blamed for it. And I get all this, like, sad emotions put my way. Which
yeah, I was pretty emotional. I feel like I really like maybe like pregnancy reset my hormones.
It could be.
No, it was
Have kids, people. Have lots of kids.
it was the work of the Lord in my heart, but
Amen.
it did. Yeah, it took a while, and you know, I love our marriage, and
Me too.
I don't know what I was expecting. Just,
I'm Superman here to be your husband,
yeah.
but I'm human.
Yo. But like a lot of ladies, I feel like, you know, you can expect marriage, you know, to be what it is, living with your best friend, going through life together. Like it's so great and it's so fun, but it's not every day is like the best date ever that you've ever been on, you know? And yeah, expect that there's tough times and good times.
And you're with that person more for just what you can get out of the marriage. I think that mentality of like, what can I gain from this other person shouldn't be your mentality. Because I think definitely in the first couple months, I was like, great, like I'm married, I can have sex with this woman, we can like have discussions and dinner dates, and like we get to live together and sleep together. But I was thinking about all of what I could get out of the marriage. And I think that's really negative, because then it creates a selfish heart, and it creates in me like expectations of like, Clarice needs to serve me, you know, and I need to be my king in my palace. But in reality, it's like, whoa, hold on here.
Yeah, that's a good point. Expectation.
Yeah.
I had a few others that I wanted to bring up, but I feel like a good one to remember that we've learned is like about the conflicts and the fights and the arguments is that yes, those times and those discussions are painful, but they grow you a lot and they're actually really beneficial in the end. And
They are.
I almost never really minded fighting. Like, okay, we have completely different fighting styles.
We do.
Like, Joel wants to solve right then and there. He'll have any discussion, like for however long it needs to be, and then fix it, you know. And I seclude myself. I draw away, and I'm like, I need to go think about this. I gotta think about what I want to say, because I don't just want to blurt out all my thoughts, because that's hurtful. But
sorry, that's what I do. I try and get words out of her. And she's like, no, I need to process.
Yeah, and that really irritated you in the beginning for sure. And I was like, I just need to leave, you know.
Yeah.
And so he's fight and I'm flight.
Yes.
But when we'd finally come back together, usually Joel coming to get me, we'd finally have a long conversation, and we didn't like to leave things hanging in the air. I mean, that's okay, you know, sometimes if it's not an appropriate time to talk about something, but for most of the time we just talked through it, and I always love those discussions. We were fighting, and then by the end of it, I'm like, wow, I feel so fulfilled. Like, he understands me. I got to get my point out there. I heard his side of it. Wow, I really feel like connected. And so I love those discussions. But Joel, he took some time to see it as beneficial.
I'm good at sweeping things under a rug and just like fixing things right away and just going, okay, we're back to normal, right? You know? And Clarice is definitely like, let me think about it, and I don't want to feel good until we've completely solved the entire situation.
Yeah.
But I think we both learned, definitely this past year and a half of being married, that working through our fights is actually more beneficial, because a day later we'll be laughing about it. You know, it's lighthearted and we're learning from it, and it's growing us. And when I first got married, and even before I was married, I was very impatient. And I think our fights and how Clarice fights made me more patient. So I can already see the growth that God has given me, which is really cool to see. But learn from your fights. You can use them to your advantage and pray through them. I think that's a great way to build your marriage up, is to stop and say, okay, we're mad at each other, but let's pray about it. Let's take a second, hold hands on the couch, even though it's 11:30, let's pray.
It's so hard to stay mad when you're praying, and Joel's always been really good at you'll remember that, like, in the midst of an argument, like, oh, this could be a good thing to do, or a good time to pray together.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I guess. But, no, I feel like I've learned a lot from you in that way. Like, it's fun looking back and see how far we've come.
Yeah, it has.
Do you have another one?
I think even in fighting, but in everyday, be careful what you say to your spouse. Because, you know, when I was first married, only a year and a half ago, but when I was first married, I was joking around with Clarice, and she was kind of like, hey, I don't like this. Or like, when we were in public, especially with my family, I get really comfortable, and I'm like Mr. Hotshot, and I'm like doing all these things, saying all these things, and Clarice afterwards goes, hey, I really didn't like that. And that was kind of when I realized, I was like, you know what, my words can either help or hinder. And so really be careful with what you say, because you can both build up your spouse and tear down. And I think in fights, we encountered that a few times where one of us had said something that was like really offensive in the fight, and we were like, whoa, hey, we just went from here to here. That like was uncalled for. Like, you know, don't say that next time.
Yeah. Don't say it just trying to like win.
Yeah,
I feel like, you know, the Bible talks a lot to the power of the tongue, and isn't that James?
it is in James.
Yeah, and the tongue is a fire, and it can, you know, build up or tear down or bless or curse, and it's very, very true. And and like if you say something wrong, like, you know, give each other grace, because it's one thing to just say something hurtful, but then to also hold on to that from the other person. That's just not fair. You know, we're all human and we fall short in those areas. And I always heard, don't use words like always or never when you're arguing, like, oh, you never do this for me, or you're always late from work or something, you know, like, try not to use those absolute words, because they're not usually true, you know. And I've done that a few times, or we'll correct each other and be like, I always?
Really?
And they're like, no, okay. But,
I think it's good to watch what you say, and if you, it's not really a rule, but it's definitely an unspoken rule for us to not use those words. And we'll have a podcast coming up here soon about unspoken rules that we have in our marriage. It's going to be a really fun one. We've been planning it, so stay tuned.
Yeah.
But we kind of call each other out on it. It's like, hey, whoa, always, or we don't say that. And I think it's really important. And if you're thinking about, oh yeah, I can't use the word always, you're thinking about more what you say and not just trying to hurt the other person.
You're trying to say stuff that actually is true and makes sense, you know.
Yeah.
Don't just fight with like the ammunition. Like
the goal is not to hurt the other person or to win the argument. You know, if anything, you should be looking for a win-win situation where both parties, you know, win after the argument, and that comes through talking it out and not arguing or battering with firing words of aggression.
Whoa. Yeah.
Have grace too. You know, I think that was, even in the expectations, even in words, like when we first got married, you know, Clarice is awesome. She's amazing. She's a lovely bride, you know, but she's human, and I need to have grace for her in the hard times. And, you know, she also lives a life as well. And so she's got bad days, she's got good days, you know, and to have grace through that.
Yeah. I like that.
Do we have a bonus topic we want to share?
A bonus. A bonus what we've learned? I mean, I have a few extra thoughts, but do you have any?
Go for it.
You don't? Okay. Well, I was thinking a little bit about like the little things in marriage. Like, I remember realizing like, oh, these small things really add up in our marriage to like the big things, you know? Like, if you do something once and then twice and then 3 times, you know, it becomes like a tradition for you. And we love those little things, like going to bed at the same time, like, you know, that that becomes like a rule, you know, like
Yeah.
something we always do together. We expect to go to bed together, like we stay up if the other person's not home yet, and like that just makes you feel close. Or like eating all of our meals together, or like Bible studying together. You know, it seems like such little things, but those really build your marriage over time. And I just think that that's really important. Like, find those things that you like doing together and then pursue them. And, you know, it can be right in your living room or in your kitchen. And it's just, yeah, it's a lot of fun.
If you love the Lord and you love your spouse, then your goal should be to grow your marriage and to grow in the Lord. And so doing that with your spouse is the best thing that you can do. And include them. I think that's a huge part. Don't push them away, but include them.
Yeah.
So
That was really good.
it was. Well, thank you for watching the Growing as a Family podcast. It has been awesome, and hopefully you watched to the end and heard all of what we had to say about what we have learned in marriage so far. We'll see you next time in our next podcast.
Bye.